Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I have been a user of virtual instruments for over 20 years, and especially when I run electric piano sounds or electromechanical keyboard sounds, one thing I like to do when I run those sounds, when I play those sounds, either live or recording tracks for people, is I like to have some kind of cabinet simulation, something to kind of wake up the sound, add a little bit of space around the sound so it's not so incredibly direct, and also add a tiny bit of harmonic saturation and overdrive. I don't want a distorted sound by any means necessarily, but I do want to have some kind of coloration as opposed to an incredibly direct and possibly sterile virtual electric piano. Even when I'm recording real electric pianos, often I will run them into a clean amp, either a Fender Princeton or a Magnatone. Sometimes I might pass it through a tape echo before it hits the amplifier. And then what we might do in mixing is mix the direct output straight off of the tines, straight off of the harp of the Rhodes, for example, or a direct out from the Wurlitzer, and mix that with the amplified tone. What I've often done with virtual amps or with amp simulators is I'll turn off the preamp or the tone stack, and I will just use the cabinet simulation. Um, Guitar Rig from Native Instruments lets you do this where you can just use the Control Room Pro module, which is just the cabinets and the mics. Um, Even the built-in Logic Amp Designer lets you bypass, basically have a DI as your preamp and only use the cabinets. What I have found often with using the virtual preamps and the virtual tone stacks in Guitar Rig or Logic Amp Designer or even Softtube's Amp Room, much like the real amps that they're emulating, is that they're not built to take the frequency spectrum that an electric piano will deliver. Especially in the low end, they have a tendency to really flub out, bottom out, or get really harsh in the upper mids and in the treble region. So I'm very excited to run this test. I haven't done this yet. You are all going to discover this along with me. Universal Audio has just released a free amp plugin called Showtime 64, which I believe is based on a Fender Showman amplifier. It is a black panel Fender emulation, but it's a high headroom, high wattage amp. I am not affiliated with Universal Audio. This video is not sponsored. It's a free plugin. I believe it's free until the end of October. I just wanted to see what would happen, how it responds to virtual electromechanical instruments. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the stock Logic electric pianos, and we'll just see how this amp plugin responds. So I'm going to load up the stock Logic vintage electric piano, and I'm going to turn off all of the effects. I'm even going to turn off the EQ for now. And let's see what it just stock out of the box with everything turned off. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's try the Stage Mark I model. Let's see what that sounds like. It's incredibly direct. I would even say a little bit plasticky. It's good for a stock electric piano. It's great. It's usable, but it needs some help. So throw on let's throw on the Showtime 64. First thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to gain stage this, because this is meant for guitars. So the level that's coming from a virtual instrument is probably too hot for the amp to stay clean. So I've got it pretty much at unity gain, and I've got the input gain low enough that it's not immediately overdriving the front end of the Showtime, and I've increased the output level to compensate. I've also turned off whatever this room simulation is in the plugin. We'll get to that in a second. That already sounds a little bit more inspiring to play. Obviously, the Showtime has no reverb, and if this were for my own personal situation, I'd put a little bit of reverb on a bus, but I want this to be as objective and clear and naked as possible. So it loads up with the default EQ setting of treble on 6, middle on 5, and bass on 5. So let's see, if I bring the treble down to 5, let's see where we're at. Volume is on 4. Now compared if I bypass it. Engaged. Let's listen to what the 3 different mic offerings are. So right now I'm on the standard 57 and 121 combo. I will say I'm not the biggest fan of the fact that it is pre-mixed and you can't balance the 57 and the 121 yourself. It sounds good. I just wish I had control over it. Then we have a 414 emulation. Just changing the mic, the 414 has a much more prominent top end, and I didn't even touch the EQ. And then finally, there's a 160 ribbon mic emulation. I love the sound of 160s on speaker cabinets. So let's see what this sounds like. Let's see how much we can push this volume knob until it starts to really overdrive. So this is on 4. Let's wheel it up to 6. We're already getting some crunch. Let's see if I bring it back to about 5. Now, just to remind ourselves, if I put Showtime in bypass, that is a much more inspiring sound to play. Let's see if we can deflub the sound, bring the bass back to about 2.7, bring the middle up to 6, treble up to 6. And it's distorting, but it's not overly aggressive or harsh to my ears. Okay. I like that sound. Let's check out this tremolo. That's with the intensity on 10. Let's wheel it back to something a little more reasonable, like 5. And let's push the speed just a little bit. Let's push the speed to 4. Wow, even 5 is really quite intense. I get the tremolo at a point where I feel it, but I don't hear it quite so obviously. There we go, 3. It's doing something really, really interesting where it's like that plasticky transient of the direct virtual instrument. It's just rolling off that plasticity or plasticness. All right, let's try it on Clavinet. So I'm going to load up, again, the stock Logic vintage Clav. This is still, all these years later, this is still my go-to clavinet, virtual clavinet. So we're going to leave this as default. I'm going to bring the output down just a little bit. We're on the A and C pickups, and we're going to load up our new friend Showtime. So this is the thing with clavinets, right? Compared to electric guitars, they have a much more extended bottom register, and it can be much more prone to farting out like that. So let's, again, bring our input down to about 9, -9 rather. This is not very scientific at all. I'm just playing through these sounds. So this is, again, when you bring up Showtime, it comes up with the ribbon and 57 combination. Let me just make sure. Let me make sure that everything, yeah, everything's off. So my low D is kind of pushing the amp, but and even with the super staccato playing, it's doing a really good job of holding together. Let's push the input, turn on the bright cap, see what that does. Now I'm curious, I'm going to turn on the internal wah-wah simulation in virtual vintage Clav in Mainstage Logic. I want to see how that pushes the front of Showtime. Yeah. Without Showtime, same sound. So it's acting almost like it's compressing the top end of the wah and making it, it's actually taming so much of the harshness, even though I have the bright cap. No, I don't have the bright cap on. Interesting. Let's put the bright cap back on. And it's clearly overdriving, but it doesn't sound or feel super distorted to me. Let's check out what this room knob does. So I've been at 0 this whole time. It's at 46%, and that's pretty drastic, the amount of room reverb. Let's try 0 again. Let's turn off the wah-wah so we get a better sense of what's going on. Now, in this case, I know I mentioned before that I was a little upset. Upset's maybe a strong word, but I was a little disappointed that we can't control the mix of the 57 and the 121. I do wish there was a little bit more specificity under the hood of what actually is going on in the room, uh, on the room knob. But much like Native Instruments guitar rig, it's just a slider called air. So I can't be too mad. Also, I can't be too mad. This is free. 20% should be, again, where I feel the roominess of this parameter without hearing that slap or that early reflection or whatever is going. So all in all, I am incredibly impressed with this Showtime 64 amp from Universal Audio and how it responds to Rhodes and Clavinet, which would be my primary use cases for a virtual amp in my situation. Um, while it is free for the month of October, I don't think you can go wrong. It's a no-brainer to sign up for a UA account and download it. I think I will find so many uses for this in my Rhodes, Wurlitzer, and Clavinet tracking. I might even try using it on like Mini Moog and analog synths. Um, there are a few things that I wish it had. You know, like I said, I wish you could balance the 57 and the 121 in greater detail. I wish there was more transparency about what was happening on the room mode. Again, for a free plugin, this is absolutely amazing, and I will be using it quite heavily, I imagine. Again, I have no affiliation with Universal Audio. I don't know anybody there. They didn't ask me to make this video. It's a free plugin for the month. I just snagged it and wanted to put it through its paces, and I figured I'd turn the camera on while I did that. All right, thank you so much for watching. My name is David Rishpan. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.